Welcome back, folks, to the Not Mike and Mike Show. My name is Brian Nelson. I am not Mike, and join with me, as always, is my co-host, Mike McLeod. He is Mike, and this is our second episode of the week, Mike.
Yeah, so I'm already tired. I want to go home.
Well, I've got an exciting show for you today. The previous episode was about the NFL and the NFL, and what do we have today, Mike?
The NFL and the NFL.
Should be exciting. We're going to talk about our Not Reality League for Week 11 and make our selections for our 5 teams, as well as talk about the AFC West and predict the future for the rest of the 3 top contenders of the AFC West. But first, let's go to our moves for Week 11.
Well, actually, first things first, we got to talk about Brian. Finally getting a job, finally working, getting paid to do this.
I am not on the edge. I'm not like, I'm
poor?
Yeah, I'm not poor anymore. I'm not leech. That's the animal I was referring to.
Okay.
Trying to think of. I'm not a leech on society, so I'm fully employed. There you go.
Perfect. You're no longer getting just work experience or whatever they want to call you, and you're not getting paid to do what you do. You are now an official member of society.
There you go.
Welcome back.
I like this new me. I feel important, you know?
Is your hair done yet? No? All right. Maybe one day. So
I'm just going to leave my hat like this now.
Week 11, Not Reality League. Let's just get right into it. Sorry. I had
ad drops.
Yeah, ad drops. I'm going to add more. How do I say? No, I'm just kidding. I'm going to add back Oakland. They were on bye week this week. Had to drop the Baltimore Ravens, who I picked up last week just for the one game against the Cleveland Browns. That went oh so well for them. And then I'm actually going to drop the Green Bay Packers in order to pick up the Detroit Lions. So that is now my top 2 draft picks on the waiver wire because of a lack of
production from them,
yeah.
And I did the same as well, so we're draft kings, you know?
Yeah.
We're really good at this, folks.
FanDuel, even.
Well, my moves for the week, I've made so many moves, added a bunch of teams, dropped a bunch of teams. I didn't even know who I had this week, but all I know is that I keep the New England Patriots and I keep the Seattle Seahawks every single week. So my 3 moves of the week, I'm going to drop the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who were a week rental, and I'm going to add the Tennessee Titans. I'm going to drop the New York Jets, the Plains, as I like to call them, and pick up the other New York team, the New York Giants.
The New York Football Giants.
New York Football Giants, because, you know, we get so confused with the 40s and 50s that in 2016 we have to refer to the New York Giants as the New York Football Giants as opposed to the baseball.
Manhattan Giants,
yeah. And then my last team that I actually keep every single week is on bye, Denver. So I have a free pickup and a roster spot, so I'm going to pick up the Miami Dolphins. And so we'll go to our most confident, least confident.
You can go first.
I'll start. New England over San Francisco, probably the easiest lock of the week.
Sure.
For New England to pick up a win after losing to Seattle last week should be a cakewalk for them. Really shouldn't be any test for the Patriots.
You never know. Colin Kaepernick's looked better. I mean, obviously not going to win that game, but he almost threw for 400 yards a couple weeks ago. Almost beat the Cardinals last week. I like the improvement Colin Kaepernick has made in that system.
So they won't lose by 20. They'll lose by like 14.
There you go.
The rest of my matchups, I have Tennessee over Indy. Tennessee's on, I think, a real good hot streak with Marcus Mariota and DeMarco Murray. And they're at 500, which is great for the Titans. It's like uncharted territory. It hasn't been like that since the Air McNair days. And Indianapolis is just so inconsistent that I think Tennessee will surprise a lot of people. And I feel pretty confident with that pick. My third place game will be the Giants over the Chicago Bears. Chicago, one of the trash teams we talked about early in the week, not very imposing at 2-7. No. And so the Giants, I think, will have an easy matchup there. Seattle over Philly, really tough matchup, but Seattle showed what they had against New England. And even though Carson Wentz seemingly turned it around last week, I still think the rookie will have trouble with that Seattle defense.
Yeah.
And my least confident matchup is one of my waiver pickups. When you have to pick up 3 kind of pick 'em games,
especially when you have the better record.
Yeah, it's hard to make roster moves. So one of my roster moves is my least confident matchup: Miami over the LA Rams. The LA Rams, the bane of my existence, the bane of my happiness. 6-3 games, 9-6 games, terrible. And I hope they lose.
They're going to win 12-9. You heard it here first. So you talked about New England over San Francisco being the easiest lock of the week. I have the Pittsburgh Steelers over the Cleveland Browns this week. That is my most confident matchup. Can be argued that that is a better lock 'em.
Stronger lock.
Stronger lock,
Yeah.
thank you. Nothing really to say there. Cleveland Browns, you know where I stand on it if you watched earlier this week. The Cowboys over the Ravens is my second most confident pick, just because the Cowboys are rolling after beating Pittsburgh last week. And the Ravens, I don't like the Ravens, never have, never will. Detroit over the Jacksonville Jaguars. I think that Detroit just knows how to win close games, and the Jaguars know how to lose big games and lose games big. So some combination of that is going to happen that week. The Chiefs over the Buccaneers is just fourth place for lack of being able to put them higher. The Buccaneers, Jameis Winston, hasn't really impressed me. We saw what Kansas City defense was able to do against Cam Newton. Down 17, they came back and won it. Marcus Peters with basically the man move of the year.
And Winston is turnover pro.
Exactly.
It's going to be cake for the Kansas City Chiefs. And I don't know if Justin Houston will be back from the PUP list, but if he is, I definitely think he'll get a lot of pressure in there, a lot of errant throws. And Mike Evans, he has been dinged up with concussion protocol.
Yeah.
So
I really hope he's playing.
Him matched up against Peters is going to be a tough matchup for the Buccaneers to overcome the Chiefs defense.
And then last but not least, I have Oakland over the Texans. Just because it's in Mexico City, there's a lot of altitude there that you don't really think about. You know you're going to be dealing with it when you go to Denver or one of those places, but you don't think about it with Mexico City because you hardly ever go there. It's just as high as Denver in terms of altitude, and it's listed as a home game for the Raiders, which I think is an absolute travesty. And, you know, sure, Oakland is closer to Mexico City than Houston.
So for that game, the Raiders quarterback will be David Taro.
I mean, his name's Derek, but yeah.
But Carr in Spanish is Caro. Yeah?
No boy.
See what I did there?
All right.
All right, great note to end on this first segment. When we come back, we'll talk more about your Raiders and the AFC West and predict the rest of the matchups going forth in 2016/17.
If you have an interest in a career in sports broadcasting,
whether it's behind the scenes or on camera,
then this is the class for you.
Class is held every Wednesday from 1:30 to 4:30 in room 121 alongside the library building.
For more information, contact Greg Poff. That's me at solano.edu.
we hope to see you here next semester. And remember,
It's more than just sports. It's an education.
And welcome back, folks, to the Not Mike and Mike Show. We are getting prepared for the AFC West Gauntlet. 3 teams have a great shot of winning this division, and our very own Mike McLeod, AFC West expert over here, is going to break down the remaining games for each of the 3 teams. Let's start with the Denver Broncos. Now, their next matchup after this week.
They're on bye week this week.
Yeah, so when they come back from bye week, they are going to face the Kansas City Chiefs. How do you see that game turning out?
I think they're going to lose, even though it's in Denver. I think maybe I just don't have a lot of faith in that offense. I think a lot of things got pointed out in that Sunday night game against the Raiders. The Chiefs are a better team, I think. The Broncos, honestly, are a little bit lucky, I think, to be here at 7-3. They're going to take a loss in that one.
And then the next 2 matchups after that important divisional matchup are 2 away games against AFC South foes in the Jacksonville Jaguars and the Tennessee Titans. Mike, how do you see those games working out?
I think they beat both of those teams. The Jacksonville Jaguars, like I said earlier, learn how to lose games big and lose big games. And then the Titans, I think that's a stepping stone for them. Mariota and DeMarco Murray aren't really set to deal with the likes of Von Miller and that vaunted secondary. I think that those are 2 games that the defense really wins for them.
And when they finish those 2 road games, they get to go back home to Denver and face a very tough New England Patriots team. How do you see that matchup?
The Patriots, unless they already have the division locked up and they're sitting Tom Brady, they're going to go out and they're going to beat the Denver Broncos. Maybe the Broncos get up for this game because they realize that they need to basically win out to really have a shot at the rest of the division. but I really see them losing this game to the Patriots.
Yeah, the only shot I really see them having in this game would be if they pressure Brady. When teams pressure and get to Tom Brady and he's not able to be comfortable in the pocket and get those timing routes of 3-4 seconds, that's all he needs. And the Denver defense is one of the few defenses in the league that can maybe put up a fight, but I agree with you, and that's going to be a tough game for them to win.
Belichick can scheme around that, though.
Yeah.
He can stop Von Miller.
And so after that Patriots game, they have their third road game in 4 as they travel to Arrowhead in Week 16 against the Kansas City Chiefs. Do you think they pick up a win against the Chiefs, or do you think they go 0-2?
I think if they can't win in Denver, they're not going to win in Kansas City. That crowd noise is really underrated. It's one of the loudest stadiums in the NFL. I think you have Trevor Siemian, who would be basically playing for a playoff spot at that point, and I just don't see him really doing anything there.
And now we'll tease their Week 17 matchup because they'll play the Raiders. And since we're going to talk about the Raiders eventually, let's switch to our next team, the Kansas City Chiefs. They are currently 7-2, and they play the Tampa Bay Bucks. And obviously, you feel confident with your matchups. Do you believe they're going to come out victorious?
I'm actually really scared of the Chiefs as a Raiders fan. But objectively looking at it, the Chiefs, they just know how to get things done. Like we said, Jameis Winston, very turnover prone. This is a game that defense can win for him fairly easily. Give him a win.
And obviously, we talked about the Chiefs and the Broncos matchup. You have them going 2-0. That is their next week's matchup. After that, they travel to Atlanta. How do you see that game going?
I'm actually going to give them a loss because it's in Atlanta. And if it was in Kansas City, I'd score it a little bit differently. But in Atlanta, you have Matt Ryan, you got a huge running attack, and you have Julio Jones. I think that's a lot of moving parts that defense really has to look out for. And, I mean, Alex Smith, he's a game manager. He kind of just makes sure he doesn't lose the game, and I think he has to do more than not lose to beat the Falcons.
And one thing you also have to take into account of schedule watching, because the next week is a huge game against the Raiders.
Yeah.
That has trap game written all over it with a stout offense from Atlanta. So I definitely think they could be prone to lose that one. That's going to be a very tight matchup. Obviously, I just mentioned their next week after that, Week 14, is going to be a huge decision point of the AFC West as they travel to Oakland to play the Raiders. Or actually, it's going to be in Kansas City.
Yeah, in Kansas City to play the Raiders. They already have the one game in hand against the Raiders. And I actually think this is a game they lose. I think they go in maybe a little worn out from the game against Atlanta for whatever reason. The Raiders are just playing a lot better recently, and their defense is looking better. And I think they want to go out and have retribution for the 13 points that they put up in the last matchup. I'm just going to say that they squeak it out. It'd be some overtime thriller, maybe.
That's fair enough.
That's probably my bias shot.
But it's definitely going to be a huge point to go back to.
That game is going to decide the season. Whichever way it works out, whoever wins that matchup will win the division.
And so after that big matchup, Titans will look to play spoiler. They couldn't, in your predictions, spoil the Denver Broncos season. Do you anticipate the Titans maybe pulling an upset over the Kansas City Chiefs?
I'd have to look more into the Titans season and see where they would be in terms of possibly making the push for the division. But I just think that, like I said, it's another stepping stone. And it really is terrible for the Titans to have to play the Broncos and the Chiefs back-to-back. But that's going to be a big learning experience for him. And Marcus Mariota is going to be much better for it. But I don't think he wins either of those games.
And we talked about the Broncos in Week 16. He believes the Chiefs can be victorious against the Broncos at Arrowhead. And then they wrap up their season on the road against San Diego. And San Diego, always a tough team. Do you anticipate the Chargers playing spoiler?
I mean, they could play spoiler. It really depends on if they have the division wrapped up by then, the Chiefs do, or if the Raiders are still giving them trouble. I see them pulling out the win, though. The Chiefs over the Chargers to finish the season 12-4.
All right, so that's 2 of the 3 teams. Now let's go to Mike's favorite, and the moment he's been waiting for. Talk about the Oakland Raiders. This week's matchup is your least confident against the Texans, but you believe that they'll be victorious.
Just Brock Osweiler, the Lobster, threw for 99 yards in his last matchup, and so you have a team in the Raiders that has a bad defense. and an inept offense in the side of the Texans, I think it's a no-brainer that you have Derek Carr being able to pull out the stops. They're used to playing in Denver at least twice a year. Texans never really go that high. So that really favors them. I think Raiders pull out the win.
And then their next two games are against struggling teams, the struggling Carolina Panthers and the very inconsistent Buffalo Bills, both at home. How do you see those games working out?
I think that the Panthers are going to be, I mean, as much as I don't want to say, I think it's going to be more of a cakewalk than the Bills. Panthers, for whatever reason, are having the biggest Super Bowl hangover ever and just find ways to lose. And I think that, hit Cam Newton in the helmet and make him cry, and you got yourself a win. The Bills, on the other hand, as much as you love to bag on Sexy Rexy, I think he's a really good defensive coach, and I think he has something to pull out to scheme against the Oakland Raiders offense. That being said, it's probably another one of those close games. Maybe he goes for 2 at the end to clinch it or whatever. Some big play at the end will win them the game.
And we talked about Week 14's matchup against the Chiefs. You think they'll be able? You're hoping they're going to be able to.
That's my
squeak that one out.
bias. Is just that win right there.
So as you're predicting 4 straight wins up into their matchup against the Chargers in San Diego, how do you see that matchup going?
Again, a close game. Maybe the Raiders shouldn't be in the position they're in because they're so close to being like 3-6, but. The Chargers at that point aren't going to be really playing for much. Even though it's in San Diego doesn't even want to be there, so it's going to be like another home game for the Raiders. I think that one's fairly simple, fairly cut and dry. Give the Raiders a win on that one.
And then I'm just going to tell you folks, they're going to beat the Colts in Week 16, so we can get to the most important matchup, Week 17 against the Broncos. Teased it earlier. How do you see that game shaking out?
So if everything has gone right up until this point, they're 13-2 as opposed to 11-4 for the Chiefs. They could sit everybody. The division's wrapped up, and they just lose that one at home to the Broncos, and they finish 13-3. I think even if things aren't going well, I think that the Broncos will have more to play for than the Raiders in that one. That could potentially decide whether the 6th seed goes to the Broncos or somebody else. Either way, the Raiders or the Chiefs, one of the two is going to get that 5 seed wild card. What?
So I built this climactic moment to this big Week 17 matchup that decides the season, and you say Raiders have it locked up. They're going to rest everybody.
Sorry, man.
Thanks.
I thought I told you before the segment
No,
started.
not on the same page.
But, I mean, they win 6 straight. Maybe they want to...
13-3, folks. That is what Mike is predicting. The Raiders, he predicts them to win the division. Chiefs obviously should make the playoffs at 12-4 as the top wild card. Do you think 10-6 is good enough for the Broncos to make that last wild card spot?
I'd have to pay more attention to the rest of the AFC, but just off the top of my head, I would assume so. I don't think anybody's really going 11-5 unless they're winning the division. Most of the teams in the AFC are around. I mean, maybe you look at Pittsburgh, but they're probably going to win that division. Mm-hmm. So, I couldn't tell you.
All right. So that's how the AFC will shake out, folks, in the opinion of Mike McLeod. That does it for us for this episode. I'm Brian Nelson, Mike McLeod. This is the Not Mike and Mike Show. Thanks for watching.
Hey guys, I'm Tiana Wilson here on the Solano College Sports Network with an exciting update about our brand new show, Sound Off, a sports talk show focusing on local sports in the Bay Area, featuring schools like Fairfield's very own Armio, Rodriguez, Fairfield High, and of course, Solano Community College. The show will be hosted by Soat Balazi, featuring Dylan Collins and Josh Kinder. I'm Tiana Wilson, and thank you for watching the Solano College Sports Network, your number one source for local sports. There we